The notification chimed at 2:47 a.m., pulling me from restless sleep like a fishhook through my consciousness. My phone glowed on the nightstand, displaying that familiar "Find My Device" alert I'd grown accustomed to ignoring. Livia's phone had been acting up for weeks, constantly pinging location updates at random hours. Except tonight felt different. I rolled over, squinting at the screen through bleary eyes. The little blue dot that represented Livia's device wasn't where it should be. It wasn't in our bedroom, wasn't anywhere in our house on Maple Street. Instead, it blinked steadily from an address I'd never seen before. 1247 Riverside Drive. "What the heck?" I muttered, sitting up in bed. The space beside me was empty, sheets still warm, but already cooling. Livia's pillow held the faint scent of her lavender shampoo, but she was nowhere to be found. I checked the timestamp. The location had been active for 3 hours. My name is Callum Torvin, and I've been developing real estate in this mid-sized East Coast city for the better part of 20 years. I know every street, every address, every corner where the property values dip and soar like a roller coaster. Riverside Drive was in the newer part of town, where young professionals bought condos with floor-to-ceiling windows and granite countertops they couldn't afford. I'd never had reason to visit 1247 Riverside Drive. More importantly, neither had my wife. The bathroom light was off, no sounds of running water or midnight routines. I padded downstairs, checking the kitchen, the living room, even the basement where I kept my home office. Empty. Her car keys were missing from the hook by the garage door. "Livia?" I called softly, knowing I wouldn't get an answer. The Find My Device app refreshed automatically. The blue dot hadn't moved. I grabbed my jacket and truck keys, driven by something I couldn't quite name. Curiosity, maybe. Or that gnawing sensation you get when puzzle pieces refuse to fit together the way they're supposed to. 23 years of marriage teaches you to recognize the difference between routine and anomaly. This was definitely anomaly. The drive to Riverside Drive took 12 minutes through empty streets slick with October drizzle. Street lamps cast yellow pools of light on wet asphalt, and the occasional late-night delivery truck rumbled past. The address led me to a cluster of modern townhouses, all clean lines and expensive landscaping. Number 1247 sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, lights glowing warmly in the front windows. A silver BMW sat in the driveway. Not Livia's Honda, but parked beside it was a car I recognized, her friend Vicky's red Mazda. I pulled over 2 houses down, engine idling, windshield wipers sweeping away the persistent drizzle. The logical part of my brain offered reasonable explanations. Girls' night that ran late. Emergency with one of Livia's yoga students. Some perfectly innocent reason why my wife's phone was pinging from a stranger's house at 3 a.m. The suspicious part of my brain whispered different possibilities. I sat there for 47 minutes, watching the windows. Shadows moved behind drawn curtains. The warm glow suggested people were awake, active, comfortable. At 3:34 a.m., a figure passed by the front window. Tall, broad-shouldered, definitely male. My phone buzzed. Text message from Livia. "Can't sleep, went for drive. Home soon. Love you." The timestamp showed 3:35 a.m. The blue dot on Find My Device hadn't moved from 1247 Riverside Drive. I stared at the message for a long moment, rain pattering against the windshield. 23 years of marriage, and my wife was lying to me from inside another man's house. The drive home passed in a blur of yellow streetlights and racing thoughts. I parked in the driveway, turned off the engine, and sat in the quiet of the garage. The house looked unchanged since I'd left. Colonial style, blue shutters, the garden Livia had planted last spring now resting for the winter. Everything looked normal. Everything felt wrong. I went inside and climbed back into bed, leaving my phone on the nightstand with Find My Device still open. The blue dot continued its steady pulse from Riverside Drive. At 4:18 a.m., I heard the garage door rumble open. Car doors slammed softly. Footsteps on the kitchen tile, the familiar creak of our bedroom door. "Callum?" Livia whispered. "You awake?" I kept my breathing steady, eyes closed, playing asleep. She moved around the room quietly, hanging up clothes, running water in the bathroom sink. The mattress dipped as she slipped back into bed. "Sorry," she murmured, settling against her pillow. "Couldn't sleep. Took a drive." I waited until her breathing deepened into sleep, then checked my phone one more time. The blue dot had finally moved. It was home now, right here in our bedroom. But I'd watched her walk in empty-handed, no phone in sight, which meant she'd left it at 1247 Riverside Drive. Morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I made coffee while Livia showered, going through the motions of our usual routine while my mind churned over the previous night's discovery. The kitchen felt different somehow, as if the familiar space had shifted while I wasn't looking. Morning, honey, Livia said, appearing in the doorway wrapped in her favorite terry cloth robe. Even at 32, she looked stunning first thing in the morning, the kind of natural beauty that had caught my attention across a crowded bar 25 years ago. Her wellness influencer lifestyle kept her in remarkable shape, all green smoothies and yoga poses that she documented religiously for her social media followers. Morning, I replied, handing her a steaming mug. Sleep better after your drive? She accepted the coffee with a grateful smile, settling onto her usual stool at the kitchen island. Much better, thanks. Sometimes I just need to clear my head, you know? Where'd you end up driving? Oh, nowhere special. Just around town, listening to music. She waved a dismissive hand. You know how it is when your brain won't shut off. I nodded, sipping my coffee and watching her face. Livia had always been a terrible liar, which was one of the things I'd loved about her. She couldn't maintain eye contact when she was being dishonest, had a habit of touching her nose, speaking just a little too fast. This morning, she looked me straight in the eye and lied with the confidence of a seasoned politician. Speaking of things not working right, I said casually, how's your phone situation? Still giving you trouble? Her hand went to her robe pocket, then stopped. Actually, that's the weird thing. I think I lost it during my drive last night. Must have fallen out of the car somewhere. That's frustrating. Want me to call it, see if we can locate it? No! The response came too quickly, too sharp. She caught herself, forced a laugh. I mean, it was acting so glitchy anyway. Maybe it's time for a new one. Didn't you say you were planning to upgrade your plan? I had said that, about 3 weeks ago. Interesting that she'd remembered such a specific detail. Sure, I agreed. We can hit the phone store this afternoon. Get you something that actually works. Relief flickered across her features. Perfect. You're the best. She kissed my cheek and headed upstairs to get dressed, leaving me alone with my coffee and growing certainty that my wife was hiding something significant. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close, then opened Find My Device on my phone. The blue dot was active again, pulsing steadily from 1247 Riverside Drive. Whoever lived there had Livia's phone. More than that, they were using it. I called my daughter Sydney, who answered on the second ring despite the early hour. At 22, she kept college student hours, even though she'd graduated last spring and was working at a marketing firm downtown. Dad? Everything okay? You never call this early. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Quick question. Do you know if your stepmother has any friends living on Riverside Drive? A pause. Sydney had never warmed to Livia, despite my wife's efforts to build a relationship. There was no hostility, just a polite distance that had persisted through 8 years of marriage. Riverside Drive? That's where all the young professionals live, right? The expensive condos? That's the area. Not that I know of. Why? Just curious about something. Thanks, honey. Dad, is everything really okay? You sound, I don't know, stressed? Smart kid. Always had been, even as a little girl. Just work stuff. Nothing to worry about. We chatted for a few more minutes about her job, her apartment, her latest dating adventures, normal father-daughter conversation that felt like a lifeline to sanity, while my world quietly shifted beneath my feet. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen and stared at the blue dot on my phone screen. It hadn't moved in 12 hours. The phone store visit that afternoon was enlightening in ways I hadn't expected. Livia picked out the latest model, something with an impressive camera for her social media work. While the technician transferred her data from cloud backups, I watched my wife's behavior carefully. She was nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap, checking her watch repeatedly, making small talk that felt forced and artificial. When the technician asked about transferring data from her old device, she waved him off. Don't worry about it. I've got everything backed up already. Which was strange because Livia had never been particularly tech-savvy. She usually relied on me to handle anything more complicated than basic phone functions. All set, the technician announced, handing over the new device. Your old number's been transferred, and everything should sync up within the hour. Perfect, Livia said, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Thank you so much. On the drive home, she was already absorbed in setting up her new device, fingers flying over the screen with practiced efficiency. For someone who claimed to be technologically challenged, she seemed remarkably comfortable navigating the setup process. Getting everything the way you like it? I asked. Just downloading my apps, updating my social media, you know how it is? I did know how it was. What I didn't know was why my wife needed to lie about losing a phone that was currently sitting in someone else's house, being used by someone who clearly had access to her personal information. That evening, while Livia worked on her laptop in the living room, I retreated to my basement office. The space had been my sanctuary for years. Wood-paneled walls, comfortable leather chair, the smell of old books and coffee. I'd always done my best thinking down here. Tonight, I had a lot to think about. I opened Find My Device one more time. The blue dot continued its steady pulse from 1247 Riverside Drive. Whoever had Livia's old phone was keeping it active, keeping it charged, keeping it close. The question was why. Jonas Kellerman had been my best friend since high school, back when we were both skinny kids with big dreams and no clear plan for achieving them. Now he worked security at the Lantern, a local bar that catered to construction workers, city employees, and anyone else who preferred honest drinks to craft cocktails. More importantly, Jonas was a retired police detective with a talent for finding information that other people preferred to keep hidden. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," he said, sliding a beer across the scarred wooden table where I'd claimed a corner booth. The Lantern was busy for a Tuesday night, filled with the usual crowd of locals unwinding after long days. Something like that. I took a long pull from the bottle, organizing my thoughts. "I need to ask you about something, and I need you to keep it between us." Jonas settled his bulk into the opposite seat, gray eyes sharpening with interest. 25 years on the force had given him an instinct for trouble, and apparently I was broadcasting distress signals. "What's going on, Callum?" I told him about the Find My Device discovery, the late-night drive to Riverside Drive, Livia's lies about losing her phone. Jonas listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. 1247 Riverside Drive, he said finally. "You know who lives there?" "No idea. That's what I was hoping you could help me figure out." Jonas pulled out his own phone, fingers moving across the screen. "Property records are public information. Let me see what I can find." While he worked, I studied the other patrons of the Lantern. Construction workers still in their work clothes, a few off-duty cops I recognized, several women who looked like they'd come straight from office jobs. Normal people living normal lives, none of them dealing with the slow-motion collapse of their marriage. "Interesting," Jonas muttered, still focused on his phone. "Properties owned by Marc Laird. Purchased 18 months ago, mortgage through First National. Want me to dig deeper?" The name meant nothing to me. Marc Laird. Never heard of him. Investment consultant, according to his LinkedIn profile. 34 years old, graduated from State with a business degree, works downtown for Morrison Financial Group. Morrison Financial. I knew the company. They handled investment portfolios for wealthy clients, the kind of people who bought expensive condos in trendy neighborhoods. What else? Give me a minute. Jonas's fingers continued their dance across the screen. Social media is pretty active. Lots of gym photos, vacation pictures, professional networking stuff. Drives a BMW, likes expensive restaurants, posts about his workout routine. Sounds charming. Here's something interesting. Jonas turned his phone toward me, showing a Facebook photo. Posted 3 weeks ago. Recognize anyone? The image showed a group of people at what looked like a restaurant or bar, all smiling at the camera with drinks in their hands. I scanned the faces, looking for... there. In the background, partially obscured by other people but unmistakably present, was Livia. She was laughing at something off camera, head tilted back, looking relaxed and happy. More relaxed and happy than she'd looked at home in months. When was this posted? September 15th. Caption says, "Great night out with amazing friends." Tagged location is Meridian, that upscale place downtown. Meridian. Livia had told me she was attending a yoga workshop that night, something about advanced breathing techniques. I'd stayed home and watched baseball, glad to have a quiet evening to myself. "Can you find out more about this Marc Laird character?" "I can try. What exactly are you thinking, Callum?" I stared at the photo, at my wife's laughing face in the background of a stranger's social media post. "I'm thinking my wife is lying to me about more than just a lost phone." Jonas was quiet for a moment, studying my expression. "You want my professional opinion?" "Shoot." People don't usually lie about small things unless they're hiding big things, and they don't leave their phones in other people's houses unless they're planning to come back for them. The beer suddenly tasted flat in my mouth. "So what do I do?" "Depends how much you really want to know. Sometimes ignorance is easier than truth." I thought about that drive home from Riverside Drive, the sick feeling in my stomach as I'd watched my wife lie to my face. The growing distance between us over the past few months, the way she'd been guarding her phone, taking calls in other rooms, staying late at yoga classes that seemed to happen with increasing frequency. "I need to know," I said finally. "Whatever it is, I need to know." Jonas nodded slowly. "Then we'll figure it out. But Callum, be prepared for the possibility that you won't like what we find." I finished my beer and stood up, leaving money on the table. I already don't like what I've found. At this point, I just want the whole truth. Give me a couple days to do some digging. I'll see what I can turn up about Mr. Marc Laird and his connection to your wife. The drive home took me past Riverside Drive. I didn't plan the detour, but somehow found myself cruising slowly past 1247. The BMW was in the driveway again, lights glowing in the front windows. As I watched, a shadow passed by the window, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with casual familiarity through what was clearly his own space. My phone buzzed with a text from Livia. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. According to Find My Device, her old phone was 50 yards away from where I sat in my truck. I drove home to our empty house, poured myself a whiskey, and sat in my basement office staring at that pulsing blue dot. Whatever was happening between my wife and Marc Laird, it was happening right now, in real time, while she sent me loving text messages from her new phone. The next morning brought October sunshine and a wife who seemed unusually cheerful. Livia hummed while making breakfast, kissed me goodbye with extra enthusiasm, and mentioned she'd be spending the day at the wellness center working with clients. Busy day ahead, she said, gathering her yoga mat and water bottle. Probably won't be home until late. No problem, I've got plenty to keep me busy. After she left, I opened Find My Device. The blue dot had moved. Instead of pulsing from Riverside Drive, it was now located at Morrison Financial Group downtown. Marc Laird's office. The Morrison Financial Group occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where important people made important decisions about other people's money. I'd driven past it countless times, but never had reason to go inside. Today, I parked across the street and watched the entrance. At 11:43 a.m., Marc Laird emerged from the building's revolving doors. I recognized him immediately from the social media photos Jonas had shown me. Tall, athletic build, the kind of confident stride that suggested he'd never encountered a problem he couldn't solve with charm or money. He was carrying 2 coffee cups and walking with purpose toward the parking garage. I followed at a distance, staying back far enough to avoid detection, but close enough to see where he was headed. The silver BMW pulled out of the garage 3 minutes later, Marc visible behind the wheel, passenger seat occupied by someone with long, dark hair, someone who looked exactly like my wife. They drove to Riverside Drive. I sat in my truck 2 blocks away, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the blue dot on Find My Device confirm what my eyes had just witnessed. Livia was supposed to be at the wellness center. Instead, she was at Marc Laird's condo, her old phone broadcasting their location to anyone with access to her Apple ID. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to hide her affair, my wife had created the perfect tracking system. My phone rang. Livia's name appeared on the screen, calling from her new number. "Hi, honey," I answered, proud of how normal my voice sounded. "Hey, just wanted to check in. Crazy busy day here. Probably won't have time for lunch." "No worries. Where are you right now?" A pause. Brief, but noticeable. "The wellness center. Why?" "Just wondering. I was thinking of stopping by with lunch, but if you're too busy..." "Oh, that's sweet, but yeah, totally swamped. Rain check?" "Of course. Love you." "Love you too." I hung up and stared at my phone screen. The blue dot continued its steady pulse from 1247 Riverside Drive. That afternoon, I called Frankie Torino, my site foreman and the closest thing to a brother I'd ever had. Frankie had worked construction his entire adult life, possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of local gossip, and could find out anything about anyone given sufficient motivation and beer money. "I need a favor," I said when he answered. "Background check on someone. Unofficial." "This about Livia?" The question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you sound like a man whose world just shifted, and in my experience, that usually involves a woman. Plus, my cousin Vicky mentioned seeing Livia around town with some guy who wasn't you." Vicky. I should have known the local gossip network would pick up on unusual behavior eventually. In a city this size, secrets had a short shelf life. "What did Vicky see?" "Lunch at Meridian a few weeks back. Coffee downtown last Tuesday. Nothing scandalous, but she said they looked comfortable together." Comfortable. That was one way to describe it. The guy's name is Marc Laird. Investment consultant, drives a silver BMW, lives on Riverside Drive. Give me 24 hours. I'll find out everything from his credit score to his favorite pizza toppings. "Thanks, Frankie. I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. But Callum, whatever you're thinking of doing, think it through first. Anger makes people stupid." That evening, Livia came home with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and stories about her busy day at the wellness center. She was animated, cheerful, full of energy and affection. We ate dinner together, watched television, went to bed at our usual time. It was the most normal evening we'd had in months, which somehow made it worse. While she slept beside me, I checked Find My Device one last time. The blue dot glowed steadily from our bedroom, right where it should be. But I knew the truth now. The phone might be home, but my wife's heart was somewhere else entirely. The next morning brought answers I wasn't sure I wanted. Frankie called while Livia was in the shower, his voice grim with the weight of unwelcome information. Marc Laird, 34, investment consultant at Morrison Financial. Clean credit, no criminal record, makes good money. Divorced 2 years ago, no kids, lives alone in that Riverside Drive condo. Okay, what else? Here's where it gets interesting. He's been seen around town with a married woman for the past 2 months. Coffee dates, lunch meetings, evening visits to his place. My sources say they're not exactly hiding it, just being discreet. Sources? Bartender at Meridian. Parking attendant at Morrison Financial. Couple of neighbors who like to watch the street. Small city, Callum. People notice patterns. Patterns. That's what this was. A pattern of deception that had been building for months while I remained obliviously focused on work, house payments, and the routine maintenance of a marriage I'd thought was solid. Anything else? Yeah, Vicky says the woman's been posting less on social media lately, used to document everything. Yoga classes, healthy meals, motivational quotes. Past few weeks, radio silence. Because she'd been busy documenting a different kind of life. A secret life that didn't include her husband. Thanks, Frankie. What are you going to do? Good question. What do you do when you discover your wife has been living a double life for months? When every yoga class and wellness workshop was actually time spent with another man? I'm going to think about it. Don't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Anything that ends with you in handcuffs or divorce court. After hanging up, I sat in my basement office and stared at the wood-paneled walls. 23 years of marriage, 8 years with Livia specifically, 8 years of building a life together, making plans, talking about the future, all of it built on a foundation that was apparently less solid than I'd believed. My phone buzzed with a text from Livia. Early day at the center, home by dinner, maybe we can do something fun tonight. I checked Find My Device. The blue dot was already pulsing from Morrison Financial Group. Something fun. Right. Mrs. Pritchard lived next door in a house that had been in her family for 60 years. She was 73, sharp as a tack, and possessed an almost supernatural awareness of neighborhood activities. If something happened on our street, Mrs. Pritchard knew about it within hours. More importantly, she liked me and had never quite warmed to Livia. Callum, dear, she said when I knocked on her door that Thursday morning. What brings you by? Everything all right? Actually, I was hoping you might help me with something. Do you remember seeing Livia leave yesterday morning? Mrs. Pritchard's eyes sharpened with interest. She'd been a high school principal before retirement, and still possessed the ability to sense when someone wasn't telling the complete truth. Yesterday morning? Let me think. Yes, I was watering my plants around 9:30 when she backed out of your driveway. She seemed in quite a hurry. Did you happen to notice what time she came home? Well, that's interesting you should ask. She didn't come home until nearly 6 o'clock, but I could have sworn I saw her car drive past around lunchtime. Drive past? Heading toward downtown. I only noticed because she usually waves when she sees me in the garden, but this time she seemed distracted. Distracted. Because she was on her way to meet Marc Laird. Mrs. Pritchard, can I ask you something in confidence? She nodded, settling into the conspiratorial tone that suggested she was enjoying this conversation immensely. Have you noticed anything unusual about Livia's schedule lately? Different patterns, new routines? Oh, my dear boy. Mrs. Pritchard leaned closer, lowering her voice. I've been wondering when you'd ask. She's been keeping very irregular hours for someone who supposedly works at a wellness center. Leaving early, coming home late, sometimes not coming home until the next morning. Not coming home? Last Tuesday night, for instance, her car never returned to your driveway. I assumed she was visiting her sister in Albany, but then I saw her Wednesday morning acting like she'd been home all along. Tuesday night, the night I'd followed the Find My Device signal to Riverside Drive. Mrs. Pritchard, I need to ask you for a favor, and I need you to understand that this stays between us. Of course, dear. If you see Livia leaving during times when she's supposed to be at work, would you mind noting the time? Nothing dramatic, just keeping track. Mrs. Pritchard's expression grew serious. Callum, is everything all right in your marriage? I looked at this woman who'd been my neighbor for 8 years, who'd brought casseroles when Sydney graduated college, who'd helped Livia plant the garden that first spring after we moved in. I'm not sure, I said honestly, but I'm trying to find out. That afternoon, I drove to the Lantern to meet Jonas. He'd called earlier with information about Marc Laird, and his tone suggested the news wasn't encouraging. I did some digging, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Marc Laird's got an interesting reputation around Morrison Financial. Interesting how? He's good at his job, makes the company money, keeps his clients happy. But he's also got a history of complicated relationships. Meaning? Meaning his divorce 2 years ago involved allegations of infidelity. His ex-wife claimed he had a pattern of pursuing married women, said it was some kind of game for him. My stomach clenched. Game? According to the divorce records, she accused him of deliberately targeting women in committed relationships, something about the challenge, the thrill of the chase. And Livia fits that profile. Married, attractive, financially comfortable, probably feeling neglected or unappreciated. Yeah, she fits. We sat in silence for a moment while I processed this information. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was being hunted by someone who specialized in destroying marriages. There's more, Jonas continued. I talked to a buddy who works security downtown. Marc Laird's been seen regularly with the same woman for about 2 months. Always during business hours, always at upscale places where married couples don't usually go for lunch. Because she's supposed to be at work? Exactly. They're not hiding from everyone, just from you. The casual cruelty of that observation hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been going about my normal routine, trusting my wife, planning our future together, she'd been building an entirely separate life with someone else. What do you think I should do? Jonas was quiet for a long moment, staring into his beer. Professionally? Document everything, hire a lawyer, file for divorce, and take her for everything she's worth. And personally? Personally, I think you're entitled to some answers before you blow up your life. But Callum, be smart about how you get them. That evening, I sat in my basement office with a legal pad and started making lists. Times, dates, locations, lies told and documented. The Find My Device logs provided a digital trail of Livia's actual whereabouts versus her claimed activities. The pattern was damning. Every yoga workshop corresponded to extended periods at Riverside Drive. Every busy day at the Wellness Center included hours spent at Morrison Financial Group. Every late night, working with clients, ended with her phone going dark at Marc Laird's condo. For 2 months, my wife had been systematically lying to me about how she spent her time. The question now was what I intended to do about it. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that usually lifted my spirits. Today, it felt like a mockery. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, and waited for Livia to come downstairs so we could have the conversation I'd been rehearsing in my head for 3 days. She appeared at 7:30, already dressed for another day at the Wellness Center, her yoga mat tucked under one arm and her new phone clutched in the other hand. "Morning, honey," she said, accepting the coffee mug I offered. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep? Kept thinking about things." "What kind of things?" I studied her face, looking for signs of guilt or nervousness. Instead, she seemed genuinely curious, maybe even concerned. Either my wife was a better actress than I'd given her credit for, or she'd compartmentalized her double life so completely that she could maintain perfect innocence while sitting in our kitchen. "Work stuff, mostly. The Henderson project is running behind schedule, and I've got 3 other properties in various stages of development. Sometimes I feel like I'm juggling too many balls in the air." "You work too hard," she said, settling onto her usual stool. "Maybe we should plan a vacation. Get away from everything for a week or 2. A vacation. With the woman who'd been lying to me for 2 months. That sounds nice. Where were you thinking? I don't know. Somewhere warm, maybe the Caribbean. We could do one of those all-inclusive resorts, just relax and reconnect. Reconnect. The word hung in the air between us, loaded with irony that only I could appreciate. "Livia, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy? I mean, really happy with our marriage?" She blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. "Why would you ask that?" "Because lately you seem distant, like your mind is somewhere else." "I'm not distant. I'm just busy with work, trying to build my client base. You know how important the Wellness Center is to me." "Right, the Wellness Center." I sipped my coffee, choosing my words carefully. "How's that going, by the way? Building your client base?" "Really well, actually. I've got several new clients who are making amazing progress. It's so rewarding to help people transform their lives." "That's great. Anyone I might know?" Another pause, this one longer. "I don't think so. Most of them are young professionals, people who work downtown." "Young professionals who work downtown, like investment consultants at Morrison Financial Group." "Well, I'm proud of you for following your passion. I know it wasn't easy to start over in a new career." Relief flickered across her features. "Thanks. That means a lot. She finished her coffee, kissed my cheek, and headed for the garage. I'll probably be late again tonight. Big session with one of my new clients. No problem. I'll find something to keep myself busy. After she left, I opened Find My Device. The blue dot was already moving toward downtown, toward Morrison Financial Group, toward Marc Laird. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and spent the morning driving around the city. Not following Livia, not spying on her activities, just thinking, processing the reality that my marriage was over, even if the formal ending hadn't happened yet. At noon, I drove past Meridian and saw the silver BMW in the parking lot. Through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see two figures at a corner table, leaning toward each other in intimate conversation. I didn't stop. I didn't confront them. I just drove past and added another entry to my mental catalog of lies and deceptions. That afternoon, Frankie stopped by the house with information I'd requested about Marc Laird's background. We sat in my basement office while he shared what he'd learned from his network of contacts throughout the city. "This guy's got a pattern," Frankie said, consulting notes he'd scrawled on the back of a receipt. 3 serious relationships in the past 5 years, all with married women, all ending badly. How badly? Divorces, restraining orders. One woman had to move out of state to get away from the mess. He's like a tornado that touches down in people's lives and destroys everything. And now he's got his sights set on Livia. Looks that way. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I'd been asking myself the same question for days. The rational response was obvious. Hire a lawyer, file for divorce, divide our assets, and move on with my life. Clean, legal, final. But I wasn't feeling particularly rational. I want to talk to him first, Marc Laird. I want to look him in the eye and hear what he has to say. That's a bad idea, Callum. Probably, but I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Is this just physical attraction? Or is he planning to destroy my marriage for sport? Does it matter? It matters to me? Frankie studied my expression for a long moment. If you're determined to do this, don't go alone. And don't do anything that could come back to haunt you in divorce proceedings. I won't. Promise me. I promise. That evening, Livia came home at 9:30 with stories about her challenging client session and apologies for missing dinner. She was attentive, affectionate, full of plans for our weekend together. It was a masterful performance, and it made me angrier than any of her lies had. After she fell asleep, I sat in the darkness of our bedroom and made my decision. Tomorrow, I would drive to Morrison Financial Group and have a conversation with Marc Laird. It was time to meet the man who was destroying my marriage. Morrison Financial Group's lobby was all marble and glass, designed to project success and stability to clients who entrusted their financial futures to the company's expertise. I'd dressed carefully for this visit, khakis, button-down shirt, sport coat, looking like any other potential client seeking investment advice. The receptionist was polite and professional. "Do you have an appointment with Mr. Laird?" "No, but I was hoping he might have a few minutes to discuss some investment opportunities. I'm looking to diversify my portfolio." Let me check his schedule. She consulted her computer screen, fingers clicking across the keyboard. He's got 15 minutes between appointments. I'll see if he's available. While she made the call, I studied the company directory mounted on the wall behind her desk. Marc Laird, Senior Investment Consultant, 3rd floor. His photo showed a confident smile and the kind of polished appearance that probably impressed clients and attracted married women. "Mr. Laird can see you now," the receptionist said. "3rd floor, suite 314. The elevator is just around the corner." The ride to the 3rd floor gave me time to rehearse what I planned to say. Stay calm, stay rational, gather information. Don't make accusations, don't lose control, don't do anything that could be construed as threatening. Suite 314 was a corner office with views of the city and furniture that suggested its occupant was doing well for himself. Marc Laird rose from behind an expensive-looking desk, extending his hand with practiced professional courtesy. "Mr. Torvin. Callum Torvin." His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. "Please, have a seat. I understand you're interested in investment opportunities?" I settled into the chair across from his desk, noting the family photos that were conspicuously absent, the gym bag tucked behind his chair, the expensive watch on his wrist. "Actually, I'm more interested in discussing my wife." Now his expression did change. The professional smile faltered, replaced by wariness. "I'm sorry?" "My wife, Livia Torvin. I believe you know her." Marc Laird leaned back in his chair, studying me with the kind of careful attention that suggested he'd been expecting this conversation. "Mr. Torvin, I'm not sure what you think you know, but I know my wife has been lying to me for 2 months. I know she's been spending time with you during hours when she's supposed to be working. I know her phone spent the night at your condo last Tuesday. Her phone? Find my device, a useful technology when your wife forgets to turn it off. He was quiet for a long moment, apparently weighing his options. When he spoke again, the professional courtesy had been replaced by something colder. What do you want? I want to understand what's happening. Is this just physical, or are you planning something more? Planning something? I know about your history, Mark. The pattern of married women, the destroyed relationships, the trail of wreckage you leave behind. His smile was sharp and completely without warmth. Your wife came to me, Mr. Torvin. I didn't pursue her. But you didn't discourage her either. Why would I? She's an attractive woman who's clearly unhappy in her marriage. The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my voice level. And you specialize in unhappy married women. I specialize in giving people what they want, what they're not getting at home. Which is? Attention, excitement, the feeling that they matter to someone. And when you're done with them? He shrugged. That's not my problem. I studied this man who was systematically destroying my marriage, looking for some sign of conscience or regret. Instead, I saw someone who viewed other people's pain as entertainment. What does Livia think is going to happen? Does she think you're going to leave your comfortable bachelor lifestyle for a relationship with a divorced woman in her 30s? What Livia thinks is between Livia and me. She's my wife. Not for much longer, I'd guess. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with implications that made my stomach clench. This wasn't just an affair, it was a deliberate campaign to end my marriage. You're enjoying this, I said. I'm enjoying your wife. Everything else is just collateral damage. I stood up slowly, fighting the urge to reach across the desk and grab him by his expensive tie. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed him the Find My Device screen, still tracking Livia's old phone. You might want to be more careful about digital evidence. Divorce courts love documentation. His confidence flickered for the first time since I'd walked into his office. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you. My wife may think she's being clever, but she's actually created a perfect record of her infidelity. Timestamps, locations, frequency of contact. A lawyer's dream. I headed for the door, then turned back. Mark, when this is over, when you've destroyed my marriage and moved on to your next victim, remember that some people don't forget. Some people don't forgive. And some people have very long memories. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I left him sitting behind his expensive desk in his corner office and took the elevator down to the lobby. The conversation had confirmed what I'd suspected. This wasn't just an affair, it was psychological warfare conducted by someone who treated other people's lives as disposable entertainment. The question now was how I intended to respond. That evening, Livia came home with Thai takeout and enthusiasm about planning our Caribbean vacation. She'd apparently spent her lunch hour researching resorts and flights, full of ideas about romantic getaways and opportunities to reconnect. The irony was suffocating. This place looks amazing, she said, showing me photos on her tablet. Private beach, couples massage, gourmet dining. What do you think? I looked at the images of paradise, at my wife's excited expression, at the carefully constructed fantasy she was building while simultaneously destroying our marriage. It looks perfect, I said. Absolutely perfect. The plan came to me while I sat in my basement office at 3 a.m, staring at the Find My Device screen and thinking about Marc Laird's smug confidence. He'd made one crucial mistake during our conversation. He'd assumed I was just another cuckolded husband who would quietly accept defeat and slink away. He was about to learn otherwise. I called Jonas first thing Monday morning. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. In your professional opinion, if someone were hypothetically planning to expose an affair in a very public way, what would be the legal boundaries? Hypothetically? Hypothetically. Jonas was quiet for a moment. As long as the information being exposed is true, and as long as no laws are broken in obtaining it, public humiliation isn't illegal. Embarrassing, yes. Devastating to reputations, absolutely, but not criminal. What about social media? Public posts? If the information is factual and obtained legally, First Amendment protects your right to share it, though I'd recommend being very careful about how you phrase things. Understood. Callum, what are you planning? I'm planning to give my wife and her boyfriend exactly what they deserve. The first step was gathering evidence. Real evidence, not just the digital breadcrumbs from Find My Device. I needed photos, documentation, a comprehensive record of Livia's deception that would be impossible to deny or explain away. Mrs. Pritchard proved invaluable in this effort. When I explained what I needed, she embraced the project with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been waiting years for an opportunity to play detective. "I've been keeping notes since our last conversation," she said, producing a small notebook filled with precise handwriting. "Times, dates, observations. Your wife has been keeping very irregular hours for someone with a steady job. Can you be more specific?" "Last Tuesday, she left at 9:15, claiming to have early appointments, but I saw her car return at 10:30. She was inside for exactly 47 minutes, then left again carrying an overnight bag." "An overnight bag?" "Small suitcase, the kind you'd pack for a weekend trip. She put it in her trunk and drove toward downtown. While Mrs. Pritchard provided surveillance, Frankie worked his network of contacts throughout the city. Construction workers, bartenders, parking attendants, the invisible army of service workers who noticed everything and remembered details that mattered. "Your wife and this Mark character aren't exactly hiding," Frankie reported. "They've been seen together at Meridian, that coffee place on 5th Street, the wine bar near the river, always during business hours, always acting like a couple." "Acting like a couple how?" "Holding hands, kissing, the kind of behavior that makes other people uncomfortable. My buddy who works valet parking says they tip well and act like they own the place." The arrogance of it was breathtaking. While I'd been worrying about the state of our marriage, wondering if I was being paranoid or suspicious, Livia and Marc had been conducting their affair in plain sight of half the city. By Wednesday, I had enough documentation to destroy both of their reputations. Photos of them entering and leaving Marc's condo, timestamps from Find My Device showing the duration of their visits, witness statements from people who'd seen them together around town. But documentation wasn't enough. I wanted them to understand the consequences of their choices in the most public, humiliating way possible. The opportunity presented itself on Friday afternoon. Livia mentioned that she'd be attending a wellness industry networking event that evening, something about connecting with other professionals and building her client base. "Lots of important people will be there," she said, applying makeup in our bedroom mirror. "Could be great for my career." I checked Find My Device. Her old phone was already pulsing from Riverside Drive. The networking event was being held at the Meridian Hotel, the same upscale venue where Livia and Marc had been conducting their public romance. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, looking like any other professional attending an industry gathering. The ballroom was filled with exactly the kind of people Livia would want to impress: wellness coaches, yoga instructors, nutritionists, fitness trainers, her social media followers, potential clients, professional contacts who could advance her career. I found a table near the back and waited. Livia arrived at 7:30, stunning in a black dress I'd never seen before, moving through the crowd with confidence and grace. She worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, exchanging business cards, building the professional network that was so important to her future. Marc Laird arrived 20 minutes later. They maintained perfect discretion, acknowledging each other with polite nods, engaging in brief conversations that could have been purely professional. To a casual observer, they were simply two people who happened to be at the same event. But I knew better. I could see the subtle signals, the meaningful glances, the way they positioned themselves to maintain visual contact across the crowded room. At 8:15, during a lull in the evening's program, I stood up and walked to the front of the ballroom. The microphone was available, left open for networking announcements and professional introductions. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I'd like to share something with everyone tonight." The crowd turned toward me, curious and attentive. I could see Livia near the center of the room, her face pale with sudden recognition and growing horror. "My name is Callum Torvin, and I'm here tonight because my wife Livia told me she'd be networking with wellness professionals. What she didn't tell me was that she'd actually be meeting her boyfriend." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones appeared, cameras activated, social media feeds prepared to capture whatever was about to happen. "For the past 2 months, my wife has been conducting an affair with Marc Laird from Morrison Financial Group. They've been meeting at his condo, having lunch dates around the city, and lying to everyone about the nature of their relationship." I pulled out my phone and activated the presentation I'd prepared, projecting images onto the ballroom's large screens, photos of Livia and Marc entering his condo, timestamps from Find My Device, screenshots of her lies about working late. These photos were taken over the past 2 weeks. The timestamps show exactly when my wife was supposed to be building her wellness career versus when she was actually destroying our marriage. The ballroom had gone completely silent, except for the soft clicking of phone cameras and the whispered commentary of people sharing the drama on social media in real time. I found Livia in the crowd, her face frozen in an expression of absolute horror. "Livia, you wanted to network tonight. Congratulations, you're about to become the most talked about wellness professional in the city. I turned to Mark, who was standing near the bar, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. And Mark, you told me that what Livia thinks is between you and her. Well, now it's between you, her, and everyone else in this room. I set the microphone back on its stand and walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind a crowd of shocked wellness professionals, 2 destroyed reputations, and the smoking wreckage of my marriage. The parking lot was quiet after the chaos of the ballroom. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, watching people stream out of the hotel, most of them talking excitedly on their phones or posting updates to social media. My phone buzzed with a text from Sydney. Dad, are you okay? Someone posted a video of you at some event and it's going viral. Going viral. Perfect. I drove home to our empty house, poured myself a whiskey, and sat in my basement office. The Find My Device screen showed Livia's old phone moving rapidly away from the hotel, probably heading back to Riverside Drive where she and Mark could hide from the consequences of their choices. But there was no hiding from what had just happened. By tomorrow morning, half the city would know about their affair. Livia's professional reputation would be in ruins, Mark's clients would be questioning his judgment, and their secret romance would be the subject of gossip and speculation for months to come. I'd given them exactly what they deserved, complete and total exposure. The only question now was what came next.